really shameless partisan politics he's playing in the foreign interference inquiry, which until this point has been quite a serious and respectable and professional undertaking until the Prime Minister decided to make some sort of ruthless and shameless political show and a circus out of the whole affair.
Raquel Dancho uncovered tensions in the House of Commons by confronting Justin Trudeau over his handling of foreign interference in Canada, accusing him of covering up and manipulating the issue for his own benefit. From the beginning, Trudeau denied the existence of interference in elections, especially by China, but the pressure of the opposition and the impact of uncensored reports revealed a much more worrying reality. Dancho questioned Trudeau's lack of transparency, stressing that not only China is involved in these interferences, but also countries such as Iran, Pakistan, and Russia, something that the Prime Minister seemed to want to minimize. The situation escalated when Elizabeth May, normally an ally of Trudeau, made a U-turn after reviewing confidential documents and began to express doubts about her leadership, hinting at a significant fracture in support for the Prime Minister. In addition, the stance of Jagmeet Singh, leader of the NDP, generated controversy. Despite having promised independence from Trudeau, Singh aligned himself with him on issues of foreign interference, which Dancho highlighted as a betrayal of his principles. Singh's support for Trudeau, amid demands for transparency, underscored the fragility of their alliances and gave strength to accusations that the government was more interested in protecting its image than defending national security.
I think what's really important for this committee to remember, and certainly Canadians will, that the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, had to be dragged kicking and screaming into this foreign interference inquiry. You'll remember, Mr. Chair, that he had first denied there was any election interference from China, for example, denied anything was going on with the member of Don Valley North in that nomination.
Dancho did not limit himself to pointing out Trudeau's inaction. He went a step further, calling for the release of names of officials who might be collaborating with foreign governments. Noting that Canada faces the highest level of interference in its history, he made it clear that under the Trudeau administration, national security has taken a back seat, with leadership seeming focused on controlling the political narrative rather than protecting Canadian democracy. Dancho continued his onslaught, emphasizing that Trudeau had to be practically forced to address the problem of foreign interference. First he denied it, then he tried to minimize it, and finally he agreed only when political pressure left him without options. This delay, Dancho argues, reflects a pattern of evasion that has allowed foreign actors to take advantage of Canada's lack of policing. He also noted that Trudeau, instead of acting to protect democracy, appears to have used national security as a smokescreen. By restricting information under the guise of protecting security, it blocked access to essential details and prevented exposure by those who might be compromising national interests.
Iran and Pakistan and Russia. We have, in fact, at the worst point in history when it comes to foreign interference, and we've had the same Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, for 9 years. So what does that say about his leadership or lack thereof? And I would also point out that the person in this country most responsible for foreign interference and preventing it and keeping national security safe is the Prime Minister of Canada.
Dancho described this as a blatant attempt to silence truth seekers and a calculated move to divert attention from his ineffective leadership. At a crucial moment in his speech, Dancho said Trudeau's refusal to allow a public inquiry reflects a fear of what might be revealed, hinting that members of the Liberal Party itself could be involved in questionable activities. He cited former Green Party leader Elizabeth May as an example of an ally who, after reading uncensored reports, distanced herself from Trudeau and began to question the integrity of his administration. For Dancho, May's change of stance is a clear sign that even the most loyal are losing confidence in the Prime Minister's leadership. Taking advantage of the moment, Dancho also exposed the incoherence of Jagmeet Singh, who in the past had criticized Trudeau and promised to act independently. However, when the issue of interference was discussed, Singh chose to endorse Trudeau, which Dancho presented as a show of opportunism and alignment with a Prime Minister who prioritizes political survival over democratic integrity. As his speech progressed, Dancho proposed that Canada adopt an approach similar to that of the United Kingdom, where the names of parliamentarians who could be collaborating with foreign powers are publicly exposed. In doing so, she seeks to set a precedent of transparency and accountability that, she says, the current government has systematically avoided. Dancho stressed that Trudeau's failure to address these challenges has brought Canada to a critical point in which foreign interference reaches alarming levels and, without forceful action, the country's credibility could be severely compromised. Dancho went even further, making it clear that Trudeau's approach to national security is not only inadequate, but poses a direct threat to Canada's sovereignty. By failing to take decisive action in the face of interference, Trudeau has allowed foreign actors to penetrate political structures, manipulating the system in his favor. At a key moment, Dancho described how Trudeau, by attempting to conceal the names of those involved, was actually protecting those who, consciously or not, might be working against Canadian interests.
It's interesting, Miss May's stories from her perspective when she's read the unredacted and succumb report to now seems to have changed quite a bit in tone and scope. So I just find that interesting that her perspective has changed.
In addition, Dancho denounced that under Trudeau's leadership, Canada has been perceived as a vulnerable country, an easy target for foreign powers that seek to influence its politics and democracy. With 13 people identified as potentially at risk from these interferences, Dancho warned that Trudeau has not only ignored the dangers, but that his inaction has put citizens and key figures at risk, evidencing a lack of leadership on security issues. Dancho also highlighted the impact of this interference on the relationship between Canada and its international allies. By failing to seriously address these challenges, Trudeau is sending a message of weakness to his global partners, she said, which could affect Canada's standing on the international stage and undermine the trust other countries have placed in his government. Dancho firmly argued that Trudeau's strategy is clear: manipulate the narrative to divert attention from his security lapses. This tactic, he explained, is clearly seen in his decision to limit access to crucial information, wrapping the details in a cloak of national security that in reality only benefits his public image. This approach, in Dancho's opinion, turns Canadian security policy into a game of shadows, in which the real enemy is not only foreign interference, but Trudeau's lack of action. Dancho concluded his attack by stating that if Canada has reached this level of exposure to external interference, it is not only because of the aggression of other countries, but because of the lack of leadership that has characterized Trudeau for almost a decade. Dancho also noted that foreign interference in Canada is not a recent problem, but one that has been exacerbated by a decade of inaction under Trudeau's leadership. Since his first years in office, Trudeau has signaled avoiding confronting foreign powers directly, preferring to maintain ambiguous diplomatic relations rather than implement clear and forceful security measures. This stance, according to Dancho, has not only weakened Canada's standing on the world stage, but has also compromised the confidence of its own citizens. During his speech, Dancho emphasized that this crisis of foreign interference is not only a threat to national security, but a direct attack on Canadian democracy. When countries like China or Russia are allowed to influence the electoral process and internal affairs, Canada's ability to decide its own future without outside intervention is being eroded.
Amendment to ensure that the names are released would be in line with the number of what our allies do. For example, the United Kingdom rightfully names and shames any members of Parliament who are acting in a treasonous manner or who are colluding with foreign countries to undermine the United Kingdom's national interest, and I do believe that...
Dancho stressed that by not acting, Trudeau is sending a dangerous message that the Canadian system is susceptible to manipulation and that its leaders do not have the determination to defend their democratic values. Another of Dancho's criticisms pointed to how Trudeau has instrumentalized security policy to silence his critics. By wrapping the information under the guise of national security, Trudeau has limited the access of parliamentarians and citizens to important details about the magnitude and nature of the interference. This lack of transparency, Dancho noted, not only prevents an open and honest discussion about security issues, but also protects those who might be involved in questionable activities. Dancho took advantage of his speech to remind Parliament and citizens that, in the United Kingdom, the authorities expose parliamentarians who act against national interests. He likened this stance to the opacity that characterizes the Trudeau government, insisting that Canada needs a similar approach if it truly wants to protect its sovereignty. For Dancho, this lack of transparency is not accidental, but a deliberate strategy to avoid any revelation that could compromise the Liberal Party and the figure of the Prime Minister. Dancho's criticism was not limited to foreign interference. He also exposed Trudeau's disconnect from the real concerns of citizens. Instead of prioritizing national security and democratic integrity, he seems more interested in protecting his image and avoiding any scandal that could harm him politically.